A very pleasant evening to all distinguished panelists and participants. Bharti Vidyapeeth's Institute of Computer Applications and Management, BVI CAM, in association with Computational Intelligence Society, CIS chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Computer Society CS chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Technology and Engineering Management Society TEMS chapter of IEEE Delhi section, System Man and Cybernetics SMC Society chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Communication Society of IEEE Delhi section, Consultants Network Affinity CNA Group of IEEE Delhi section, Life Member Affinity LMA Group of IEEE Delhi section, Inter-Society Relations IRS Standing Committee of IEEE Delhi section, Industry Relations and Special Interest Group on Humanitarian Technology Site Standing Committees of IEEE Delhi section, Region 10 of IEEE, with the associations of Computer Society of India, Institute of Information Technology Professionals, IITP, ISTE Delhi section, and IETE Delhi Center as technical collaborator, welcomes you all to the IEEE IETE BVI CAM Technical Lecture Series on Artificial Intelligence, Boon or Bane for the Environment. With immense pride and honor, we are delighted to announce that we, with united hands, mark special contribution for the monumental occasion Golden Jubilee celebrations of the IEEE Delhi section. From 13th May 2025 to 12th May 2026, we mark 50 years of this vibrant and pioneering section, a journey that began in 1976 and has since shaped the technological and professional landscape of Northern India through innovation, collaboration, and learning. This webinar is an initiative to celebrate this legacy. According to Professor Darren, Department of Economics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, AI could be either a blessing or a curse. The future of AI remains unwritten, and it will depend on the choices we make in the current generation. The rapid advancement and widespread adoption of artificial intelligence have brought significant attention to its environmental impacts, particularly as AI systems become more computationally intensive and resource demanding. Training and deploying large-scale AI models require vast amount of electricity, water, and specialized hardware, contributing to greenhouse gas emission, increased energy consumption, and electronic waste. Recognizing these challenges, international organizations and policymakers are calling for robust measurement frameworks and standards to accurately assess both the direct and indirect environmental effects of AI throughout its life cycle, from hardware production to model operation and disposal. Understanding and quantifying these impacts is crucial for developing sustainable AI practices and guiding future regulations. I would first take this opportunity to welcome amongst us our distinguished panelists for the day. We are privileged to have amongst us a galaxy of experts. I would first welcome amongst us our expert speaker, Mr. Vyom Jain, sir, with an e-bouquet. Welcome to this session, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be speaking today.
Mr. Vyom Jain, sir, is a managing director and global business unit head, enterprise products at Nagaro. With more than 2 decades of experience in the software industry, he has successfully built and scaled global businesses in several CRM and ERP products, including Salesforce, SAP, MS Dynamics, Oracle, Workday, Infor, etc. He leads a dynamic team of over 1,100 professionals and has collaborated with more than 150 clients across over 25 countries. He has played a pivotal role in delivering several multi-million dollar digital transformation initiatives. A gold medalist at school, he is an alumnus of SRCC and IMT Ghaziabad and holds a post-graduation degree in AI and ML from Great Lakes. He is also a certified independent director, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India, and a PMP. He has a keen interest in sustainability and is pursuing an ESG BRSR certification. Committed to innovation, governance, and inclusivity, he strives on navigating complexity, transforming business, and driving sustainable growth. We are honored to have you amongst us, sir. I would now request you to kindly enlighten the House. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for having me. So I'll quickly share the presentation that I have for the day. But before that, I'm very excited and very, keen to talk about this topic because it's something which is very close to my heart as well, right? I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. So I think, as you mentioned, the topic for the day is essentially around whether artificial intelligence is a boon or a bane for us, right? And how do we measure the environmental impact of artificial intelligence, right? So I have divided this topic for discussion today into three buckets, and we'll start off with primarily understanding what is the challenge that we are facing. Why is this conversation important for all of us, right? And what is the environmental cost of even a single AI prompt that we give on Chat GPT or any other tools that we use? And what is the impact of any of these prompts that we give on the energy consumption, on the water consumption, and other harmful impacts that it has on the environment? Similarly, as you also mentioned that it has an impact on hardwares. There's a lot of hardware consumption which is required. So I'll talk about all these topics in this first part, which is understanding the challenge. And then we'll delve deeper into some real world case studies. So some evidences of how it is actually impacting the environment, right? Then what are the certain tools and metrics that we are using for measuring this impact? And then what is the transparency or what is the opacity of the measures that we use, right? So again, that is a very interesting topic which I'll touch upon in my presentation today. And then we'll talk about few steps that globally and within India, the governments are taking towards creating these policies which could help us in this conservation. Then I think the third part would essentially focus on, how the tech industry is responding. Of course, there's a lot of environmental impact, but the tech industry, all the major players like Google, Meta, and the other ones are definitely also focusing on how we can reduce this impact, right? So again, that is one of the subtopics which would be covered towards the later part of the presentation. And then what is the role of academia? What is the role of students? And what is the role of industry, right? And what are the actionable paths that we take forward for a sustainable AI? So this is how we have divided this overall presentation for today. And I'll probably delve deeper, starting with the challenge that we face. Okay. So what does it cost to ask ChatGPT about a single question or a single prompt that we shoot? What is it that cost to the environment, right? Not just in terms of money, but in terms of energy, in terms of emissions, in terms of the water consumption. So a very simple prompt, the simplest of the prompt would consume almost half a glass of clean water, which is used to cool the servers behind the scenes. Doesn't look much, right? But think about giving 50 prompts, 60 prompts, 100 prompts a day, and we have wasted like 40 to 50 glasses of water, which is huge. And this is per person I'm talking about. But again, let's extrapolate further. Let's talk about the annual amount of electricity that just ChatGPT uses to respond to prompts and that would be equivalent to charge every electronic vehicle in the US 4 times. It could power almost 100,000 or 1 lakh US households for 1 year, which is huge. And it could charge almost 23.4 million iPhones daily for an entire year. And it could supply electricity to Australia for almost 1.5 days. The entire Australia could lighten up for 1.5 day, equivalent to what electricity chat GPT uses, right? So this is huge. This is humongous. So while we're asking a question, what's the capital of Manipur? Rephrase this email. You know, we are activating a number of neural network parameters, billions of parameters, which are running on these data centers, which are spread across the globe. So why this conversation matters today? I think one of the most important aspects is, of course, there has been an explosive growth in AI. And when we are talking about AI, we are not just talking about chat GPT, we're talking about multiple tools which are there in the market, right? And AI it is definitely powering the progress, but then it demands massive energy, water, and hardware. I'll come to the hardware part in the coming slides, but then it's a massive consumption of these resources. And then in terms of the risks it create, and I think it's a huge risk to the environment. And each model training, even the training consumes huge amount of electricity and water. And stressed out regions are impacted because of this consumption. So it's basically a time to rethink as AI expands. We are seeing that this is expanding at a very fast pace. It's becoming more complex. AI is becoming more complex. Models are becoming more complex. The amount of data that is being utilized is humongous. It's growing by the day. As AI expands, I think all of us should, ask one question definitely: that what's the cost of intelligence? Is it worth it? If I ask ChatGPT what is the capital of Manipur, is it worth asking that question? It's a very small example, but every time we use any of these tools, is it worth asking that question? But having said that, I'll talk about the overall AI compute lifecycle. The overall impact it creates across the life cycle, starting from raw materials which are mined. Then we are using these raw materials to manufacture the chips, the hardware components, and then we finally assemble these AI systems. So there's deforestation, pollution, toxic waste which are released when these raw materials are extracted. Similarly, when we are assembling them into the end systems, it's a high energy use. It's a huge material wastage, right? Even the manufacturing part is heavy water usage, greenhouse gas emissions, and chemical risks which come along with. Then once it comes out of the factory or the warehouse, it is transported, right? So the hardware is in fact packaged, shipped globally, and it's stored in warehouses and it's reaching the final data centers. So the huge cost of distribution, the global logistics, all the vehicles that are used to move these parts or these equipments from the factory to the warehouse, from the warehouse to the data center. I think it calls for a lot of energy consumption, a lot of fuel that is wasted. So we look at the road freight emissions, which are almost to the tune of 2.4 GT of carbon dioxide equivalents annually, and it also pollutes the air and sea, right? So there's a huge cost that comes along while we are doing the transportation part. Then we talk about the operations, right? So these in the data centers, these AI models are trained, and they are when they are after being trained, they are run in these data centers. It consumes a humongous amount of electricity and water processing and cooling, right? And the unfortunate part is that the water that is being used is clean water, right? So, of course, electricity's consumption, water consumption, and then the carbon footprint, right? So there's a lot of uh, carbon dioxide and equivalent emissions which are there, which it leaves behind. Then, if I talk about the last part, the last phase, uh, you know, the hardware becomes obsolete, and you'll see that all these AI models would need uh, a lot of new hardware, right? And the pace at which these AI models uh, are are uh, are they are being refreshed, or they are coming, new versions are coming. So we had chat gpt 3, we had version 4, so all of them, as they progress, the new versions would need new hardware, right? So obsolete hardware, the hardware becomes obsolete very quickly, and this hardware is essentially, this is sent for either recycling or sent to landfills. There's a lot of cost in terms of collection and shipping. So most e-waste remains recycled also. So and dismantling and recycling, uh, while we are doing that, if it is unsafely done, then it leads to leaking of a lot of toxic materials also. And then we have seen that there are landfills, and there are water disposals, which cause a lot of pollution. So this is overall end-to-end cycle, and at every phase of this life cycle, we see that there is a lot of uh, direct or indirect impact which happens to the environment. Okay, but is growth of AI really a sustainability concern? So here I'll talk about the GPT-3, which the training itself emitted almost like 550 tons of carbon dioxide, which is comparable to almost 5 cars over their full lifetime. So imagine 5 cars could run the full lifetime. And it's just GPT-3 I'm talking about. I mean, there are n number of models which are being trained. So consider the impact that it is creating. And data centers are already, they are contributing to the tune of 1 to 3% of global carbon dioxide emissions, which is almost equivalent to aviation. So if you look at the chart at the left hand side in the bottom, you'll see that um, an air travel from New York City to San Francisco, let's say it is, you know, uh, it's almost 2.0 or 2,000 pounds of emission. And if you see the training and AI model, it's 626 0.2 thousand of pounds of emission, which is creating, right? So you can imagine the kind of emissions we are looking at while we are training these AI models. And if we do not intervene at this point, this demand could, almost lead to 13% of global electricity consumption by 2030. Again, some of the LLMs like GPT-4, they require weeks of continuous GPU power, comparable to powering entire cities. I'll not read all the examples, but there are a lot of examples while we studied what are the impacts on the environment. We saw that it's definitely multifold, and it is growing by the day. You know, um, so energy demand from data centers, for example, data centers, AI, and crypto will double by 2026. And in Ireland itself, the data centers already use 18% of the national electricity, which is rising to almost 33% by 2026. Also talking about the hardware life cycle impact. So, all these hardware, they rely on rare earth metals, which are mined with a lot of damage that happens ecologically. And while I talked about new versions, new hardware that is required for new versions of chat GPTs or other LLMs, I think, it accelerates the mining intensity and global e-waste. In one of the later slides, I'll talk about what impact it is creating, on the society, on the people who are living near these mines. But then, if we forecast this e-waste surge by 2030, we are looking at almost 2.5 million tons of e-waste annually from chip upgrades or servers and short hardware cycles. Also, there's a lot of challenge in terms of measuring the impact of all the amount of energy it consumes, because there's a lot of inconsistency in the way the data is being shared, or even if it is not shared, there are a lot of transparency gaps out there. So if I talk about some of the metric inconsistencies, uh, the energy and water usage data is often withheld due to certain non-disclosure agreements or proprietary secrecy. So there's also a problem in collection of the right kind of metrics in terms of the energy and water usage. Similarly, in transparency, there are no standard units. So they are varying for different queries or different models. So that's again a challenge for measuring the impact. Then in terms of, there's a rapid technology challenge. So AI models, chips, and deployment methods, they are evolving too fast. So it becomes difficult to keep static tracking. So one method which is being used right now, probably that may not be used later on with the next version that comes, right? Similarly, the scope is unclear, the scope is ambiguous. We are unclear if the measurement includes training inference or hardware or disposal. Then it's difficult to attribute the AI footprint to cloud usage or to the infrastructure, right? So it becomes difficult at times to find out what is the source, where is uh, the problem coming from, where is the wastage, where is the inconsistency. So that becomes a bit of a challenge. So there are certain metrics which are used, and there are certain variables which impact these calculation of these metrics. So one of the metrics that is being used is compute intensity, which is dependent on the computing power or flops used by an AI model. Another one is carbon footprint, so total CO2 emissions across the AI model's life cycle is something that we are looking at. In terms of energy consumption, we are looking at what is the amount of electricity which is used to train and run these AI systems. In terms of water consumption, how much fresh water is being used for cooling AI data centers, right? And then hardware lifecycle emissions. So emissions that are coming from discarding the AI hardware. In terms of the variables, what is the kind of model that is being used? What is the stage or the life cycle phase where we are? What is the kind of hardware that is being used, or what is the deployment environment that is being used? So multiple variables come in play. But I'll briefly show you some of the tools which are being used by different organizations or different experts, uh, and this is dependent on the scope, whether it is for example, MLCO2 calculator would be used for estimation. It could be for early stage planning, or a carbon tracker could be for training and inference, and it could be for cloud usage tracking. So these are on a very high level, but then again, of course, there are multiple tools which are being used across the industry. So what are the evidences that AI is bringing, this impact to the environment, or the toll that it is having on the environment? So I talked about briefly of the rare earth elements mining. So there's a place in China which is called En Baotao, and it is home to one of the world's leading rare earth mining regions. And there's a lot of mining activity that has been done on this in this region, and has caused an environmental crisis. And the rivers out there and the land has become unsuitable for agriculture. And one of the artificial lakes in the region that has become a toxic waste dump with a lot of heavy metals and radioactive elements that are affecting the nearby population. So all these radioactive elements or heavy metals, they definitely have an impact on the health of the people also. So, and all this is because of the irresponsible mining. I mean, it's just for profits that uh, the companies are doing these mining, and they are not taking care of the overall impact it's creating on the environment. Okay, then I think I'll also want to talk about Zuckerberg's Meta data center. So all the communities near the Meta data centers, they definitely report higher utility bills because of higher consumption, more ecological disruption, and they're definitely having a strain on local water and energy infrastructure there. And about 40% of the US data centers, which include those supporting AI, are in areas with high or extreme water scarcity. So as more and more water is being utilized, the water becomes scarce. And data centers definitely use fresh water, which is already scarce, and it is in fact, in competition with the other resources which are perhaps required for communities, people at large, agriculture, for the ecosystem, the society. So on the top of it, of course, it's making matters worse by making the water of it impacts the quality of water. And yeah, I mean, it's a big impact because of this metadata center or metadata centers which are there in US. Then we will touch upon one of the other case studies where there's a place in Ghana which is called Agbog Bloche. Difficult to pronounce, but yeah. So again, this is one of the world's largest e-waste dumps. Almost 15,000 tons of waste is dumped every year from the Western tech industry. And you'll find a lot of discarded GPUs, servers, electronics, that are dismantled and they are burnt. So a lot of air pollution because of the waste burning, a lot of land pollution, or it's definitely impacting the soil lead levels there. So the safe limit for soil lead levels is almost 400 ppm, while we see that it is almost around 18,000 ppm. So uh, almost 40 more times or 60 more times, 45 more times maybe. So chicken eggs, I think they are the dioxin levels are going to 20 times of the legal safety limits, and there's a widespread contamination of air, water, and food chain out there. It's impacting the health of children, and they're having high blood lead levels. It's risking their brain development as well. And then I think the data center expansion in these developed countries often drives the older infrastructure into the e-waste stream, right? So it's not a problem which is a distant one, it is an existing problem. Similarly, I can talk about some more case studies, but maybe in the interest of time, I'll probably briefly touch upon another case study, which is the TikTok data center. So there's a place in Brazil, Caucasia. So TikTok plans a massive data center, which is almost to the tune of 12 football fields, right? And the region has faced drought in 16 out of the last 21 years, and almost 10,000 people have lacked clean water in 2019. So 1 megawatt of data center uses almost 25.5 million liters per year, and a global AI water use may hit 6.6 billion metric cube by 2027, which is almost half of UK's annual consumption. So again, it's also having a lot of local backlash where there are fears of desertification. So there's an ecosystem, cutting the ecosystem, which is being impacted, and it's worsening the food insecurity. Okay, so Another challenge, as I mentioned above earlier, was there's a lot of opacity. There's a lot of lack of transparency, because of which it becomes difficult to compute what is the exact wastage or exact energy emission. Uh, so in Brazil and Latin America, this new data center, it withdraws almost 60 to 80% of local water, while government and companies refuse to publish the usage stats. Right, so you can imagine it becomes so difficult for people because the government itself is refusing to publish these usage stats, right? And then several organizations like Microsoft, Rowan, they have signed NDAs on water and sewage usage. So there is no public consumption data available. Even the portable water usage by big techs like Google's data centers, it is consuming 4.3 billion gallons of water in 2021, right? And many withhold this data under proprietary claims. So, of course, it is impacting the data collection, the transparency, and perhaps the organizations are more focused on profits. So, of course, the organization should keep a balance between the ethics and the profits and maintain a high level of transparency as much as possible. Having said that, I think there are a lot of measures which are being taken by different countries. For example, in US, we are having this US Artificial Intelligence Environmental Impacts Act, which was signed in 2024. And it is the first major legislation which is recognizing AI's resource and environmental costs. And it maintains collaboration between NIST, EPA, these are different bodies who develop unified methods to measure carbon, water, energy, and e-waste footprints for AI systems. Similarly, in European Union, I think there's this AI Act, which is in force since August 2024. And this is the world's first comprehensive AI regulation, which focuses primarily on safety, transparency, risks, and also sustainability clauses. Similarly, in India, we have this Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, which has released regulations in November 2022 to help set benchmark for renewable energy usage, right? How we can have more efficient cooling, how we can have more better water conservation, and setting up PUE targets, which is between 1.4 to 1.5. Uh, so in fact, we have these recommendations from UN as well, which are focused on having standardized measurements, having more efficient AI, promoting recycling. So we have enhancing efficiency measures which are suggested by UN. Then we have, of course, I talked about the policies, but then how we can integrate these policies into environmental regulations. Then there are mandatory disclosures that the company should make to assess the environmental impacts. And then how we can have better and more greener data centers. Okay. Okay. So I think while we see that there's a lot of impact, and even all these giants like Google, Microsoft, Meta, of course they are the front runners in the AI race, and they are perhaps contributing towards a lot of impact on the environment. So it's not just that they are uh, you know developing AI, and they are in fact not considering environment. They are also looking at making these AIs more greener. So they have certain renewable targets. As you can see on the screen, Apple aims to be carbon neutral by 2030. Amazon uses almost 100% renewable energy and is building 3 new wind farms. Google aims to be carbon neutral by 2030 again. and over 60% of Microsoft data centers are running exclusively on renewable energy. So while uh, everybody is running after AI, and there's a huge competition there, but these companies are also recognizing this, and they are uh, trying to reduce these environmental impacts. So, for example, if you see Google, it is cooling the energy reduced. It's actually focusing on reducing this cooling energy by 40%, and it is reducing the computing energy per model also. So they are trying to improvise on these models. They are trying to come up with better models which are consuming lesser energy. Then Microsoft also is focused on conserving energy, and it's set up a climate innovation fund. As a matter of fact, they are spending like $760 million, and they have 22 m tons of carbon removal contracts as well in place. A lot of focus on rainwater harvesting and adiabatic cooling, and this ultimately leads to reduced portable water dependency, or largest they are looking at carbon removal effort, which is considered the largest corporate effort globally. These are just to talk about a few of them. So I'll not get into all of them, but I think this is something which is a food for thought for all the companies, and they are definitely focusing on reducing the carbon footprint and the environmental impact that it is creating. So I'm sure that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so there's also a need to fill these policy gaps. So one of the gaps is, as I talked about, measurement standards. So there's no global framework for AI sustainability metrics, right? So every country may have a different framework of sorts, or a different policy. So there's a need for developing international standards via multi-stakeholder initiatives, wherein OECD or ISO could play a major role, right? Or something similar to OECD and ISO initiatives which are there. Then, in terms of data collection, there's a lack of granular data on greenhouse gases, energy, water, and resource usage. So there's a need to collect more data using these sustainability indicators. Similarly, in terms of AI compute, the current data set is a mix of AI with general ICT, which is information communication technologies, and the need is to disaggregate these data sets and develop more AI specific data sets, right? Similarly, in terms of life cycle impacts, we are looking at, in fact, we are having an over focus on operation stage, in production, transportation, e-waste, and typically there's an over focus on operation stage, but production, transport, and e-wastes are typically overlooked. So there's a need to include biodiversity, water usage, and material impacts. Right. And in terms of transparency and equity, I think these emerging economies or the global south economies may be a greater environmental costs, but they lack influence in the global policy making. So um, uh, the West and the countries which are forerunners in AI, they should include the global south in measurement of the frameworks and sharing the best practices, which would help in better transparency and creating a more equitable environment. What we can do, right? So essentially, this slide talks about two stakeholders. One is industry. So maybe I represent the industry, and there is academia. So you represent the academia. Um, so what me and what we can do. So in terms of industry, I think what we can do is we can design more efficient machine learning architectures. We can leverage the existing cloud data centers rather than creating the new data centers. We have a lot of cloud data centers, perhaps we can leverage them. We can invest in circular infrastructure, in more, making more recycling possible in the ways of working that we have in the industry, adopting specialized green hardware, and disclosing the carbon and water footprint, being more transparent about that. Similarly, from academia, I think the request is to build green AI into the curriculum, perhaps have sustainability or the other ESG topics baked into the curriculum itself, and perhaps push for more open environmental benchmarks which could be adopted. Then conducting a life cycle impact of uh, how AI is impacting. So maybe a bit more research and deeper study, which academia can help with. And then, of course, fostering this industry and academia partnership, and all the research that academia does that would be helpful to the industry. And together, I think we can create a more solid impact and have a better environment for generations to come. So with that, I would like to close my presentation and open up for questions. But I think what's more important is that it's no longer enough to ask, can we build this? We should also ask that at what environmental cost? Thank you, and I'll open up for questions now.
Thank you so much, sir. It was actually a wonderful session where we have actually realized the actual impact our actions, I would say each individual action, is actually bringing on the environment. So I hope this session has enlightened the participants about the actual scenario and how we should manage our own actions also, so that we can ensure a sustainable environment for ourselves. Yes, there are certain questions I would like to now take up with your permission.
Sure, ma'am.
The first question we have, sir, can we combine innovation and energy efficiency to produce a more responsible AI? Like, is there a solution for this actual problem?
No, there is a solution. Definitely, there is a solution. I think I talked briefly about how these models can be made more efficient. So use those algorithms which consume lesser resources. So all of us or most of us are coming from a development or a coding background. So we know how to optimize our code, how to use lesser resources, right? So there's definitely a possibility, and that's why I talked about in the last slide also about how academia can do more research, come up with better models, right? So typically what happens, and I'll talk about very candidly, that in industry, when we deliver these projects or we are, doing our implementations, our goal is essentially to get the projects delivered successfully to the clients, right? We of course we have an objective of reducing the cost and taking care of several parameters, but then at times we will directly use the models which are available off the shelf, but then there is always a possibility of optimizing these models, and that's where I think the industry and academia collaboration is important, so that academia can do a lot of researches, and they can help the industry adopt those researches or the models which are optimized. So that is the kind of. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, sir. Wonderfully answered. Another question we have, sir. Are there any KPIs and benchmarks we can track within organizations to have sustainable AI?
See, I talked about some of these tools which are there in the market, right? So definitely there are KPIs, there are ways how we can track, but at times, as I talked about the transparency of the data, right? So at times, for example, the production data is something which probably we would not have access to, which only the customer would have access to. So that could be a blocker for us, right? So at times it's important that we go to the customer, we tell them that, hey, we definitely want to work together and create an impact so that the environmental, the wastages are minimum and the environmental impact is minimum. So it is something which the organization should also drive and work together with the customers to see how they can optimize, how they can measure these metrics and then improve upon them, right? So that is something which is definitely doable. Then there are tools which are available. So I take care of the Salesforce business, right? So there's a tool or there's a cloud which an offering which comes from Salesforce, which is called Net Zero Cloud, right? Similarly, there are other clouds, other offerings which are available almost by everyone. So we definitely have those tools, we definitely have those metrics available, and the question is that how many people use it. It's about adoption, right? And
Absolutely.
everybody is so busy in deliveries and implementations. So that's where probably organizations need to have a separate bucket or separate investments for talking about these metrics, making the clients aware of these metrics, and work together to improve and optimize. That's what I
Yes.
can suggest.
So, next question. This question was from our another panelist, Tanil Pathak sir. So, I hope sir has also agreed to the answer. So,
Sure.
another question we have: what are green hardware and green AI?
See, again, I'm not an expert in hardware, for example, right? But then conceptually, what green hardware would essentially mean is that anything which takes lesser resources. For example, if it needs lesser water consumption to cool down, as simple as that. So you're making those chips, Nvidia and other players, they are making those chips which are needing less and lesser amount of energy to cool down, right? Or lesser amount of resources to cool down, I mean. Uh, so I think that is essentially what is green hardware. So make those uh, hardware, those chips, those semiconductor chips and other stuff which is more environmental friendly, right? So I think that is what is green hardware. And of course, I think there is a lot of innovation that is going on right now, uh, through which the companies are focusing on creating greener hardwares, right? In fact, even in the data centers, there's a lot of focus on you know how these could be made more greener, right? So, for example, what I heard was that there are certain data centers or certain cloud centers which are uh, below the ocean, right? So they do not need to be cooled by fresh water, perhaps. Again, I mean, there's a lot of innovation that is required from the industry so that we can, and of course, academia inputs are always required. But then, with the collaboration between industry and academia, I think we can look at creating a more sustainable and more greener hardware.
Absolutely, sir. So, another question we have: what one action would you recommend to every AI learner in order to support ethical AI?
Ethical AI. Okay. Uh, okay. I think, see, what is important is that when a student comes out of a college, right, and he or she joins the industry, you know, they are probably not aware of uh, how important is the privacy of the customers, right? So,
Yes.
and it's not anyone's fault, right? It could be anyone, but then the challenge is that client works with an implementation partner like the likes of Nagaro or Infosys or TCS on the basis of uh, these confidentiality agreements, right? There are NDAs, there are MSAs, there are very severe, in fact, very severe clauses, uh, so that the customer's data and privacy is not breached, right? So I think it is important that whosoever works on the data, you know, they keep it confidential. So, for example, don't just copy paste the data which is there in customers database or maybe on their website. You just don't copy paste and put it on Chat GPT, right? Even if you have to ask Chat GPT something, just replace the data with, for example, if the client is Microsoft, I'm just giving a hypothetical name here. The client is Microsoft. I'll put an X, right? I'll put X or Y or Z, and I'll try to give a scenario which is something similar to find out my solution. I'll not give the exact scenario. I'll not give the name of the customer. I'll not give the specifics of the problem. I'll just give a high level use case and then try to so think in terms of uh, keeping your customers' data and confidentiality as the main objective while you are using ChatGPT or any other LLMs, and don't just blindly copy paste the data from the customer database or other sources, right? That is my suggestion. I mean, uh, it's not advisable. I mean, we typically have very serious repercussions if you use customers' data in the LLMs.
Absolutely, sir. But thank you so much for sharing this suggestion, especially for, I would say, new professionals who would just be joining the industry.
And
So,
whenever there is a confusion, whether we can use it or not, it's always advisable to reach out to your technical leads or your project managers. Ask them whether I can, use this data, put that in Chat GPT. Of course, they will not allow you to do that, but then still, whenever you have confusion, you should always discuss with your seniors in the team.
absolutely, sir. So, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful session today. I think the knowledge that you have shared, it is not just an eye opener. It's also for every individual. This is a marking that yes, we now need to track our actions if we want to ensure a sustainable future for ourselves. So with this, we come to an end to this wonderful webinar today. Please accept the certificate from BVI Camp family as a token of remembrance for this wonderful webinar.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for having me today, and thank you for the certificate. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. We also have a small e-memento.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful session today. We hope to join you back once again soon for another wonderful session on another wonderful topic. Thank you
Sure,
so
ma'am.
much, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, dear participants, with this, we have come to an end to this wonderful webinar today. Feedback link for your certificate of participation generation for the same has already shared with all of you in the chat window. You are requested to click on the same, fill in your details carefully and submit the same to get your certificate for this wonderful knowledge enhancing session today. And once again, thank you so much, Vyom sir. It was a wonderful session.